Good morning. Can you hear me? Sonia, I think you guys are on mute.
Yes.
There you are.
Do you see us?
I can see you.
Oh, you can. Oh, okay, because we don't see us. Yeah.
Who do you have with you?
We have Orlando, London.
Hi, Orlando. Nice to see you.
There
Nice
it
to
is.
see you.
Oh wait. And Tanika.
Tanika, there you are. I was going to say I could see like half an arm.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, I think you're over here. Yeah, it's over here.
So I'm surprised again because I think you three are the only ones on. It's been like all or nothing lately.
Team Dog.
So I guess, when it's a small group, we'll I'll flip through the slideshow, but if you guys have questions, if you know it, then we'll just breeze through it.
No problem. This is good.
But Orlando, this is probably the first time, that you've interfaced with us. So there may be things that you might not know or need to know. So the first thing I wanted to go over again is the role of the advisor. You see that I have the word coach kind of in parentheses now because we are hoping to be able to use some of that IP funding for coaching, and we are kind of hoping to go in that direction. So you'll see that I'm starting to use some of the language that AEYC is using so that we can go into that direction. Plus, it's best practice. Alicia and I have been trying to pilot advisement as coaching this last semester, and it seems to be working, and it's not much different than doing it the way that we have been in the past.
I totally agree. How about TA, technical assistant? How does that relate to the coaching, to the advisor role?
So the major difference that I'm seeing, especially if we want to utilize EIP funding, is that coaching has them come up with their own goals. Technical assistants, we might be pushing them and telling them what their goals might be, as the process goes through. So the struggle that I've seen is, getting them to articulate what it is they want to do. But I feel like if we're giving them the tool, we're showing them, where we've marked things off and where their strengths are and where the holes are in the tool, that they're having an easier time coming up with the goals themselves. That's the major difference, is that, they're coming up with their goals and they're kind of pushing the process along. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think it's great if we even advertise at the advisor as a coaching strategy, as a coach.
Yep.
Because, I think that's more appealing to professionals to say, oh, I could be a coach. So I like that. I wanted to speak about, could we also interchangeably use technical assistant as well?
Well, you can, but not when you're using EIP funding.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
Hello.
Good thing to know.
I see that you've joined us as well.
Hello. How are you? Hi, Sonia.
Hi. How you doing?
Good.
Happy New Year.
All right.
Happy New Year. Yeah.
Some of the roles for the advisor or the coach. So just want to make sure that everyone knows that the advisor is still working with the candidate, observing a minimum of 3 times, at least 3 weeks apart. Some of the things I want to clear up. So if you're doing more than 3 observations, if you're doing observation 3 and 4, those ones don't need to be 3 weeks apart. Sometimes, you're just going back to finalize something and it's a week later or whatnot. As long as you have 3 that are at least 3 weeks apart, it is okay to have some other ones, in there that aren't 3 weeks apart. The idea is that we're coaching the candidate for improved quality. Big thing, obviously, is the observation instrument and the summary form are filled out by the advisor. We are guiding the candidate in a way that promotes independence. We are reviewing the candidate's written work. We are certifying that the documentation is complete and assisting with financial aspects of the process. So again, those are just the overall roles of the advisor. Today we're going to talk about planning and coaching them, but these are the overall things. And what I will say is one of the big things that I've seen on the request for visit form is individuals are not filling out their address correctly. So I'm getting the first line of their address, but not getting the city that they live in, not getting the zip code. And although it might seem silly, it's tacked on a bunch of extra work, when I'm going to fill out certificates and put them in the system. So please just double check that that information is on there when they're submitting the form.
So how's that different now that we're doing everything electronic? Is the advisor, it still has to be signed, so it has to be, could it be on the computer and then they could print it out and then have it signed?
Yeah, that's fine.
I guess I mean, they're doing everything online. Mm-hmm. But they still need to print it out to have their supervisor sign and them have a fresh signature.
I mean, if the the email is coming, the emails typically have been coming from the advisors. So, I mean, if the advisor is sending it to me, I didn't know that they're, you know what I mean? Like it's coming from them, that's fine.
Tell me that, because we didn't have that process before. I know Maislin did that this time around, but I thought that was something that she was initiating, but we prefer our candidates to submit the application. I think it's their responsibility.
That it doesn't matter to me where it comes from, Sonia, but if the advisor is sending it to me, I know that they've seen the paperwork. Does that make sense? If the candidate is sending it, I think I would still like to see a signature on there.
Yeah, no, we have let's do signatures. Yeah, we still do signatures, and I would prefer that the candidate sends it with the advisor CC. Right.
I mean, eventually, Sonia, I would like to come up with some way where that is filled out online and it just comes to me, like some of our other forms.
Yeah.
But one thing at a time here.
I got you. No, thanks. I guess we're also talking about like our process.
Yeah, and I see that AEYC has moved, even with their trainer credential, it's all submitted online. And we do have a data system. I just need to make sure that we have the capacity to do that and figure out how it works. So I would imagine for 2019, we're going to keep things the way that they have been, but know that there's probably going to be shifts over the next year or so. All right. So the other roles of the coach or the advisor is that they're trying to make sure that the candidate shows competence. So the candidate must demonstrate their competence in the 3 ways, and I'm sure you guys have heard me repeat this 1,000 times, but the observation, the documentation, and their ability to articulate the value, purpose, and process of the work. One of the biggest things, typically we can see things in their observation. Most of the time the documentation is decent enough, but a lot of times that ability to articulate is where they struggle. And I want you to remember as advisors that sometimes that's what's going to dig them out of the hole. So they need to be prepared to speak articulately about what they do. Questions?
Nope.
Moving on. So the coach, and again, this is what AUIC is currently using. If you're going to advise and get EIP funding for advisement, this is their definition. So coaching is relationship-based, led by an expert with specialized in adult learning knowledge and skills, who often serves in a different professional role than the recipient. Coaching is designed to build capacity for specific professional dispositions, skills, and behaviors, and is focused on goal setting and achievement for an individual or group. Now, just so you know, I had spoken to them about coaching. So if you have, let's say, 2 individuals in the program that you are serving as a coach, and maybe they both have the same goals around environment, you could coach them at the same time.
Right, because you've done that. You had 2 people in one location.
Yes.
Yep.
Could,
So as long as they have the same goals and they've agreed upon those same goals, you can at the same time. Do you have questions about that?
They should have the same goals.
if they agree on the same goals.
If they agree on the same goals. They don't have to have the same goals.
For EIP funding. So if you're doing it, if they're paying out of pocket, it does not matter how you do it. But if you're doing it with EIP, they have to have the same goals.
Okay, if you're coaching 2 people simultaneously, they
Yep.
gotta have the same goals.
All of their goals don't need to be the same, but if let's say, one of their goals is to improve their reading center, that's kind of a big goal. But if that's something that they both have, then you can help them to come up with the action steps and you can work on that goal at the same time. They're probably going to have more than one goal.
Let me be clear about this. We're not talking about short-term, long-term goals. We're talking about from program to program, from visit to visit.
Correct. Yep.
Oh,
In between each visit.
yeah, the goals.
The goals for the program.
Yep.
From one visit to another, the same goals, not the short-term, long-term goals.
Correct. Yep. So it would be the goals to get them to meet the standards.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Sorry.
Which makes sense, because if you're doing observations for the program, you're going to identify gaps and things that need to be improved by the next session. But you can coach them together that, like, say, the cafeteria, snacks, you're saying this area needs to be created and you're telling both of them.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yep. That makes sense. Great. So does anybody have any questions about the definition that AUIC is using?
No, this is great. Could you also, send us the PowerPoint?
Sure.
Because I'd like to use that same language.
Yep.
Yeah, and I could do it on your phone just.
Great. All right, so the next thing, and Avril gave me this from AUIC as well. So this is their cycle of coaching. And we'll go through each of these steps in the next few minutes. But the idea is obviously that we're listening and observing, we're reflecting, planning, practice, we listen and observe again, assess progress, modify and follow up, and then start the process all over again. So we'll go through each of these steps right now. So the first session, when we're meeting, typically this is a get to know you in your program session. Finding out about the student, you're kind of just looking to see what their program looks like, taking basic notes about what you see and hear, and then creating that list of questions. I know every time I go in a program for the first time, it's, just trying to get that baseline, really trying to learn more about the candidate. And then the big thing with coaching, as many of you know, is you're not going to get anywhere if you don't have a relationship with them. Developing a supportive relationship with that individual, trust us. We want respect. We want a mutual respect, and we want to let them know that we're going to be honest with them, and we want them to be honest with us. And what I will say is, if you don't have a relationship with them, if you don't build a relationship with them, you're never going to get anywhere. Do any of you have any tips for building relationships?
It's just so natural. Yeah, like you gotta be natural. I think that our candidates don't really understand the advisor piece until they get their first connection with the advisor. So at that point, I would say the tip would be day one, it's about getting to know your candidate. That's when you begin building relationship, like to use that time to build, not just go in there like, I'm your advisor, let me see what you're doing, to have some more like connection.
Yeah, and I like that you said connection, Sonia. So I think it's important when you're building that relationship to give them a little bit of information about your background.
Yeah.
Let them know, hey, I've been in your shoes. If you've gone through the class before, that's always good for them to know. But they don't want to, they want to know that you're not just some Joe Schmo off the street coming into their program. I think, finding those connections is really important. So the next thing is about reflection. And this is kind of tricky sometimes, especially if we're going in and observing and then having our meeting with them right afterwards. But I would, encourage everyone to at least spend a little bit of time to gather your thoughts before you sit down with the candidate after your observation. And we do have some questions that we could ask them, that you can ask yourself to kind of get them thinking.
This is great. Yeah, you're sending this to us, right? Yeah. I'm like, this is good. This is good.
Yep. So what are some of the things, that you saw the candidate doing, how they demonstrated competence? What are some of the indicators that you saw that you were able to kind of check off? What are the things that you think the candidate can do better? What things were not observed? And what are those things that you can offer to help the candidate develop, and demonstrate the competence? So these are some of the questions, again, that you can ask yourself to move the candidate forward and to kind of collect your ideas before you have the conversation with them.
And this is part of the relationship building, because you're giving them feedback on what you saw that was good, and then you can go into some of the, not negatives, but the things that they need to improve on.
Yep.
And
And
so that's building a relationship right there.
yes, and we're really going to try to focus on that strength-based, that definition of coaching from AEYC. So then the other way to make your feedback useful is to really get the information from the candidate. Those of you that have been around for a while know that sometimes this is one of the trickiest things, is getting them to talk about performance, especially before you open your mouth and tell them what you think or what you've seen. So how do we I'm sorry, I've been sick for like the last 2 months.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So most of the individuals will be able to tell you some of the things that they've been able to do well, which is always a good starting point. And it's kind of our job to help them to challenges that they're having, because a lot of times, you know, they're going to struggle kind of expressing those things. And remember earlier when I said we want them to be able to articulate value, purpose, and process of what they do. This is going to help them with that in the future. So we're going to get their thoughts first. You know, some simple questions that you can ask them. What did they like about their performance on the day that you observed? What indicators they thought they demonstrated? This one's always a good one. So if you had the day to do over again, what might you do differently? You know, how are we going to meet children's needs? What are the things that they want to work on before you come back to observe? And then finally, you know, what are the things that we as coaches, as advisors, can help them to be successful in meeting their goals? Anyone ask any other questions when they meet with their candidates after an observation?
A lot of our candidates, most of our candidates are directors.
Okay.
So some of the reflection it's really about coaching your staff, how they then get their staff to perform.
Yep.
So I would add that, like some question around, you know, how could you coach your staff or train your staff to do a certain performance, because they're being coached for the whole they're getting the attention for the whole program, but their staff have to act right.
Yep.
Their staff is fine.
Yep. How do they get buy-in?
Yep. Great.
I like that too. How do you get buy-in from your staff or change it?
Sorry, I'm just writing down your notes so that for next time we can add them in.
Since we're adding something in, one of the things that we always tell candidates before their first advisor visit is to read the actual advisor chapter 5.
Okay.
So that they can kind of do an initial pre-assessment of their program as if they're the advisor beforehand, so that they know what we're looking for.
Okay, great.
Chapter 5, yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Excuse me. Okay.
So the other hard part, I think, especially for people that have been have spent most of their life doing technical assistance, is that the next step really is to listen to the candidate and keep your mouth shut.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Which I can tell you right now, you know, as someone with a technical assistance background, it is one of the most difficult things for me to do, and I have to tell myself to just be quiet. But the idea is that we're listening to them carefully as they reply. If they're mentioning something that, you know, you had also noted, take that opportunity to affirm that you had the same perception. And then when the candidate feels that you have fully listened to his or her responses, then they're going to be more ready to listen, you know, to what you have to say. So a lot of times when we ask those questions, I will sit there and write down what they have to say and then respond to them afterwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. And the next piece is coming up with a plan. And it needs to be a solid plan. So some tips for that. We're going to help the candidate clarify his or her goals. So they may be able to come up with something broad, and we want to help them kind of pare it down and figure out some of the specific actions to get to there. Identify timelines. Help them keep focused on those goals. And this is going to help them, you know, in the long run with their professional development plan. So I'm going to show you sample action plan that I use.
Mhm.
This is certainly not, something that you have to use, but this is something that I use in my daily life and also use with my candidates. So you'll see down the left-hand side, I've actually had them pull out standards. And then the action steps are, what are some of the things that we're actually going to do? The person responsible, so sometimes, if you're working with a director, it's going to be their name. But if you're working with a director and, they need to delegate things to other individuals, then maybe the person responsible is one of their staff. If it's a resource, maybe the person responsible is going to be you. You'll notice in the time frame, some of mine have specific dates. Them have immediately. So if you look over, 4.1 is obviously a regulatory concern, which is why I have them do it immediately. Some of the other things, I want to see them begin to implement the self-serve snack. And then, tissues, right? So they probably needed to get a budget approved in order to purchase tissues. They probably need to get a letter out, to request parents send in water bottles. So we want to give them a little bit of time. So you work with the candidate to help them develop that timeline. So maybe it'll be the next time you come in, maybe it'll be 2 visits from them. Does anyone have any? Oh, go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So this is based on what you would draw up in terms of the objectives, or they would identify the objectives from the standards?
Ask your question one more time.
I guess what I'm asking is who would start the completion of the action plan? Would it be the advisor doing this and providing this, or is the initial reflection with the candidate pulling out the objectives that they wish to meet?
So, good question. So what I've always done in the past is I've always started writing this stuff in while I'm talking to them, right? So if they're talking about snack, then I would go back in and help them identify the objective, the standard, those types of things. However, just went to a coach's learning community, and they said that the pen should be in the hand of the student.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't tried that yet. I can see where there might be some challenges. So I would say for you, to start wherever you feel most comfortable. But I will say that I've always used this kind of as a working tool between myself and the candidate. We would talk about timelines. I would plug it in. I would email it to them and say, I wanted you to take some time to really think about the timelines we agreed upon, and get it back to me like in a week or so.
Okay.
They have a little more time to think about it while you're not staring them down. Maybe, maybe I really can't do that in a week.
Okay.
So I've always kind of had that open relationship with my candidates where I've said, we'll fill it out the best we can right now, or we'll leave it blank and you fill it out and get it back to me, in a couple of days. So, I mean, there's no set rule, Tanika. You can, do it however you want. This is just meant to be a resource for you guys to use if you would like to use it.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. All right. And then the next step is around modeling. So, asking him or her to demonstrate, ask them to see a specific skill area the next time. So especially our directors that tend to run around all the time, we may have a difficult time seeing them demonstrate competence in physical. So you may have to tell them the next time I come out, I need to see you in the gym. And if they're the director, then usually they can kind of wiggle their schedule around to make that work.
So for the directors, we want to see them doing some, like a lot of the standards have to do with interaction with the students and things of that sort. We have to tell them, I need to see you do X, Y, Z. Like sometimes be in the classroom, be in front of them group of kids.
And Aaron, along those same lines, how can we really make that work with folks who are multi-site supervisors? Because like now we're starting to get more candidates in that they're a step above the director, but they have to be on the SAC permit. So as a result, they're taking the SAC class, but first they've got to identify which site that they're going to focus on for the purpose of their credential. And then their biggest concern is, well, I don't really know the kids as well. I don't, and I say to them, well, at least try to be in, 1 to 2 times a week at that specific site so that you can develop. But like, would that mean that, let's say for 15 minutes, they would sort of take on a group leader role and implement a lesson? Like, what would that look like for someone at that level?
Okay, so first of all, if they're at that level and they're on multiple sites, there should be some kind of plan that says how many days a week they're at that program.
Okay.
On that waiver form or on their, I forget what it's called, it says, how often they should be at that program site.
Okay.
Which means they should probably be there at least once a week. So although it's going to be more difficult for them to form relationships, if they're once a week, then they should be able to get some kind of relationship. And I would remind them at the beginning that you need to be able to verify their competence. So you need to talk to them about what you need to see and if it's really something feasible that they can do.
Okay.
When they finish up and they have their last visit, they're about to have a endorser come in. We should let them know that they have to actually show their competency with a group of students. Let them know, listen, they want to see, you're the director, you have to show your competency with a group of students when this endorser comes.
Yep, so when the endorser comes, they need to be able to see the competence with the students. They're going to be obviously looking a little more heavily on what the program looks like if they're responsible for program operations.
Mm-hmm.
We want to see them interacting with the children and the staff. And obviously on the day of the endorsement visit, they're not going to be able to run a craft activity, be in the gym, they're going to see everything, and that's why your notes are so important. All right, so the next piece of the puzzle is back to that listen and observe. So these are our coaching sessions, right? So we're working on the action plans with them. We're listening to what their issues are and helping them overcome those. And then the progress. So if we've set those timelines on the action plan, it makes it easy for us to see where the candidate is at. And obviously during this time, you can compare your observation notes from the last time or the time prior to the current, which again is why taking those notes in different colors is so important so that you are able to see that growth. All right, next is the modify and follow up. So where have they made improvement? Does anything need to be changed? So, that action plan, right? Maybe we've discovered that, we changed the environment, but maybe we're still having behavior issues. So maybe we need to change something else that's more specific in the environment. So maybe that would be added on to the action step in our plan. Were any of the timelines unreasonable? And what resources does that candidate need from the advisor to make them be more successful? And, those resources might be, linking them to something on the internet. It might be showing them where they can find training for their staff. So there's a lot of resources that we have that they may need. And then we're back to that listen and observe. So more observations. We continue with coaching sessions. We report on goals, and then we can create new goals. So I want you guys to remember that it's your obligation to help them meet all of the standards and to help them increase their level of competence and confidence. So make sure that after every observation, that feedback results in some kind of concrete growth strategies and goals. You know, there's nothing worse than going to a meeting, right, and coming out with no action steps or nothing to move forward with. And then that advisor summary. So that's kind of the last piece of the puzzle once everything is done. So these are your final thoughts on the candidate. Give the endorser a snapshot of your time with the candidate. So please take your time on this. It really is kind of a summary of everything that happens. This is the spot where you record your votes for competence or needs more training. Again, that needs more training means just that. It might not mean that they're incompetent. It just means that they would benefit from more training. However, if you fill out your advisor summary and see that your candidate needs like 3, 4, 5, has 5 areas where they needs more training, I would think twice about signing your name to that form and saying that they're ready. Anyone have questions about the advisor summary?
Yeah, well, also the observation notes, because what I find is that in the course of an observation, I'm writing down so many notes, and I'm like writing notes on the side, writing notes on the back. Sometimes I'm trying to go back, and I was playing around with the idea of typing it out, but then I'm always crunched up against time. So I have to end up using what I have, but my handwriting is still a work in progress. So do you have any tips and suggestions related to that? I know we're talking about the summary, but it just brought up about the initial observation instrument.
So a couple things. So I know some people take their notes on a piece of paper and then go back and copy them in later, slowly and neatly. That takes a lot of time. I put the tool in a PDF, and then I put it on my iPad and started typing notes.
Okay.
I think it's iAnnotate or something like that. I think there's probably other, apps that you can use. So you're just typing right over the top of it, which is different than, like using a PDF filler where it's going to move everything down and onto different pages.
Right.
That seems to work well for me, but it also comes with the challenging of swiping through pages. But the more I use it, the quicker I've been able to get at it. And you can change your colors, you can type your notes in, and it's easy to read.
Okay.
So, I am not one of those people that likes to, waste time writing notes twice. But some people do that. And some people have told me that writing the notes twice has also helped them because it gives them, it gives them a second look at the notes.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say whatever works best for you, but do keep in mind that endorser is going to need to read your notes. So they do need to be somewhat legible. But as far as writing notes, in the gutters, alongside, on the back, the more notes you have, the better.
Okay.
Typically what I do, for environments is I use the back of one page and write down every single center they have and everything they have it and just write see back page. So whatever works for you. I'm not so much concerned as like where it is in your tool, as long as it's there. And obviously, the more students you advise, the easier it's going to get.
Right, each time.
And oops, sorry. I think that's it. So does anybody have any other questions or anything that they would want to share that might be helpful to other advisors?
I just had one more, and I even feel bad because every time you cough, I feel guilty for asking a question.
I literally have been like this for like the last 2 months.
I'm so sorry. This is the last question, just in terms of clarification. So, for the summary, when you're talking about the needs more training.
Yep.
So, out of like the 14, are we saying generally once we get past like 3 or 4, that's when you're having the hard conversation with your candidate that they may want to reconsider submitting at this time?
Yes, but I'm also telling you that there is no number.
Okay.
I'm telling you to trust your gut.
Got it.
So they may have one needs more training, but it's in an area of health and safety, and you're like, no way. Like, this person cannot be running a program.
Right.
I have one advisor that under professionalism always gives them needs more training because they think that they can always grow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, but that's explained in the notes. You know what I mean? It's not like, this person is not professional. It's just that they think that the person would benefit from more training, which everyone could all the time.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's no real number, but I will tell you, like, when one comes in with 3 or 4 needs more trainings to my desk, I'm probably going to call you.
Got it.
So you're signing off saying, yes, I believe this person is competent. And what we don't want to happen is have an endorser come down, do the visit, and then they don't make it through, and then they have to pay $1,000 again.
Wow.
So I would say, by the time it gets to you and you're ready to, you're like, yes, they have my stamp of approval, they're good to go.
Got it.
Tanika, if they're really like, I'm turning this in, then you need to tell them, like, you know what, I will sign this form for you, but I need you to understand, like, what's going to happen. So if you don't get through the process, then you're going to have to pay for it again.
Right.
And that's when you pick up the phone and you call me and say, hey, I'm not feeling good about this. But I did sign the paperwork, so just kind of give me the heads up.
Got it. Yep.
And as you said, if it's an issue because the way a program is doing something like supervision, and they want to submit it, you just have to tell them the way you're doing it isn't right or something is going wrong.
Yeah.
You can submit it, if they press to submit it, okay, but just call you and let you know about that.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes they may fix the problem before the endorser shows up. You never know. But yeah, certainly just, kind of give me the heads up. The other thing is, if you tell the candidate, I'm going to submit the advisor summary, you can write that in your notes at the bottom, or just shoot me an email. Any other questions or thoughts? All right, so I think I've recorded this. So I will try to get it up on the website, and I will also send you the PowerPoint.
Awesome.
You guys know where to find me if you need me, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
feel better. Bye-bye.